Hello, my name is Tom Anselm, and this is Boomer's Journal online edition. I believe our nation is experiencing an existential crisis, maybe the worst since the middle of the 19th century. This has been building for decades. It seems to have begun in the middle of the 20th century. Post-World War II America was still united. We had just provided a major portion of the war effort to turn back evil empires in Europe and the Pacific. And have come once again to the end of aid of a nation suffering the onslaught of totalitarian regime. But now it was time to breathe, to concentrate on our own progress. Witness the unprecedented baby boom, the development of the interstate highway system, the incredible economic growth and prosperity. But as it turned out, it was a bubble, and like most bubbles, it was bound to burst. And burst it did. Undercurrents of the things that were just not right in American culture came to surface. There were movements, so many movements, moving away from what it was to what it could be, born from the needs of freedom that had been paid for dearly by the great losses in the two previous decades of depression and ultimate war and desire to be better. It was a lessening, if you will, of structures, a breaking down to be built back up better. Minorities fought, figuratively and literally, for their rightful place in this changing society. Opportunities were sought in the workplace, in education, at the ballot box, and in the freedom to live where one so desired. The nation's growing youth, having had it so good in the 1950s, was now faced with yet another war, and they said, no. No. Fueled by a radical 180-degree turn in music, the phenomenon of free love, and the emergence and availability and acceptance of illicit drugs, it became one of the most significant cultural upheavals of the century. It also was the scene of an awakening by women, many of whom had carried the ball at home during the war years, literally carried the ball, and carried literally the boomer generation during the next 18 years. They took a look at life in the U.S. and wanted more of a say, more of an opportunity to participate on an equal plane. This period included a decade known as the 60s, which fostered a sea change in the nation's morality. This led into the 1970s, where we saw a legal decision that has become a festering wound on the nation's heart and soul for almost 50 years. We are a seriously divided people, left and right, Republicans and Democrats, conservatives and liberals. It's so hard to find middle ground. Families are torn, few taking the time to make efforts to listen at all levels of society and government. That legal decision, Roe versus Wade, 1973, is on the verge of being overturned. Well, in fact, it has been overturned at this point. No matter what side of the issue you may find yourself, there can be no dispute on these facts. Over 63 million abortions have been reported in the United States since that Supreme Court ruling. As of May 2021, according to an article from National Public Radio, the fertility rate in the United States is at 1.64 children per American woman of reproductive age. That is the lowest level since 1930, and well below the replacement rate of 2.1 children. Replacement rate being defined as the number of births needed to keep the population level and stable. These are facts and not and have implications for future generations that are many and varied. But that is not my point. These are just illustrations of realities. Here's my point. Abortion, by its very definition, means to bring about a premature end, as in the flight was aborted due to weather, as in they decided to abort the mission as the enemy withdrew. Abortion, as referred to in the current context of this discussion, means to bring about a premature end to whatever it is called that is developing in a woman's womb as a result of pregnancy. Call it a fetus, call it a clump of cells, call it a baby. Whatever you call it, aborting it ends its development, ends its life. This is undeniable, supported by science, biology, and by reality. Now, some call it a woman's constitutionally granted right to choose. The law of the land since 1973, which has changed since the recent judgment by the Supreme Court. Slogans used are "My body, my choice," "Keep your laws off my body," reproductive freedom. Those opposing abortion say, at any level of gestation, the action results in a death of a growing human being. Their slogans include, "I am a person, not a choice." Unborn lives matter. Choose life. And so on. Division? Absolutely. Common ground? Very little. A clear path to an answer? Very, very unlikely. Time and good sense will hopefully lead us to a greater appreciation of what needs to be done to bring about a healing in what has been called the greatest nation to ever grace this earth. That is where my prayers lie. This is an online edition of A Boomer's Journal, and I am Tom Anselm. Take care.